A woman in California spent $11 on her front yard, and her neighbor asked if she just hired a landscaping company. $11, not $1,100. And this is not some rare fluke. Real estate agents have said for years that the outside of a home can raise or lower its perceived value by tens of thousands of dollars before a buyer even opens the front door. Most people think an expensive-looking yard means an expensive budget. In this video, I am giving you 12 backyard changes that cost almost nothing, but make a home look like it belongs in a magazine. Before we get into number one, I want to say something important. Every single week, people miss out on simple upgrades like these because they scroll right past them. We feature these budget transformations regularly, and if you are not subscribed, you are going to miss the next one that could save you hundreds of dollars. So take 2 seconds and hit that subscribe button right now. Okay, let's get into it. Number one, edge your lawn like a professional. The single fastest way to make a yard look cheap or expensive has nothing to do with the grass itself. It is the edge. A crisp, clean line where your lawn meets your driveway or your flower bed sends an instant signal to the brain that says someone cares about this property. Most homes never get this because homeowners mow, but they never edge, and that one missing step is the difference between a yard that looks maintained and one that looks abandoned. You do not need a fancy edging tool. A simple half-moon edger from a hardware store costs under $15 and can redefine your entire property line in about 20 minutes. Landscapers call this the frame effect. Just like a cheap painting looks expensive in the right frame, an average lawn looks expensive with a crisp border. Here's the fact almost nobody knows. Studies on curb appeal have shown that lawn edging alone can be one of the highest impact, low-cost changes you can make, often outperforming actual new plants in terms of visual impact per dollar. People notice edges before they notice flowers, but edging is just the frame. The next item is about what goes inside that frame, and it's something most people are doing completely backwards.
2. Use odd numbers when planting. Nurseries and professional landscape designers follow a rule that almost no homeowner knows exists. Plants look more natural and more expensive when grouped in odd numbers. 3 shrubs instead of 2. 5 flowers instead of 4. Something about the human eye finds even, symmetrical groupings artificial and cheap, while odd groupings feel organic, like nature arranged them that way on purpose. You are buying the same plants either way. The only difference is how you arrange them. Instead of lining up 4 identical plants in a straight row, cluster 3 together with slightly different spacing. Instead of 2 matching pots on your porch, use 1 large and 2 small. The surprising fact here is that this exact principle, called the rule of odds, is used by professional florists, interior designers, and even museum curators, not just gardeners. It is a universal design law, and it is completely free to apply. Once your plants are arranged the right way, the next step is about color, and getting this one wrong is the reason so many yards look messy instead of expensive. 3. Stick to a 3-color palette. Walk through any neighborhood and you will notice something. The yards that look high-end almost always use a limited color palette, usually just 2 or 3 colors that repeat throughout the space. The yards that look chaotic and cheap tend to have every color of the rainbow scattered with no plan. Pick 1 main color, 1 accent color, and 1 neutral. Then repeat that combination in your flowers, your pots, even your outdoor cushions if you have a patio. For example, deep purple flowers, silver green foliage, and white trim on your planters. That repetition is what designers call visual rhythm, and it tricks the eye into reading the whole space as intentional and curated, which is exactly what expensive landscaping looks like. The fact most people miss is that color discipline costs nothing. You are not buying fewer plants or spending more money. You are simply choosing which colors you allow into the space, and that single decision can make a $10 flower flat look like it came from a professional design catalog. Now that your colors are locked in, we need to talk about something most homeowners completely ignore, and it might be the most overlooked spot in the entire yard. Quick question for you. When you picture your own backyard right now, does it feel more like a peaceful retreat, or does it feel like a space you were a little embarrassed to invite people into? Be honest with yourself for a second. If you are watching this because you want that retreat feeling without spending a fortune, that's exactly why this channel exists. Every video here is built around real budget transformations, not fantasy renovations that cost $20,000. If that's the kind of content you want more of, subscribing and hitting the like button tells me to keep making these lists. It genuinely helps more than you think. All right, back to the list.
4. Mulch your bare soil beds. Bare dirt is one of the biggest silent killers in any yard. It signals neglect even if your plants themselves are healthy. Fresh mulch does something almost magical to the way a property reads to the human eye. It creates a clean, dark contrast that makes every plant around it look more vibrant and more intentional, almost like a matte finish behind a photograph. A single bag of mulch can cover a surprising amount of ground, and dark brown or black mulch in particular has been shown to make green foliage appear noticeably more saturated to the human eye, simply because of the color contrast. This is the same principle interior designers use with dark flooring to make white walls pop. The surprising fact is that mulch also suppresses weeds, which means less time maintaining your beds, so you are not just buying a better look, you are buying yourself free time every single week going forward. Mulch handles the ground level, but there is a vertical space almost every homeowner forgets about completely, and it's hiding in plain sight. 5. Add height with vertical elements. Flat yards read as boring, and boring reads as cheap. High-end landscaping almost always has variation in height, something drawing the eye upward instead of just across a flat lawn. This does not mean you need a fountain or an expensive tree. A simple trellis, a tall obelisk plant support, or even a tomato cage repurposed with climbing flowers can completely change the visual weight of a space. Vertical elements create what designers call layers. Similar to how a bookshelf looks more interesting with books of different heights instead of one uniform row. A yard with layered heights instantly reads as designed rather than simply mowed. Here's something most people never realize. A single flowering vine on an inexpensive trellis, something like a morning glory or a clematis, can visually double the perceived size and richness of a garden within just a few weeks of growth, all for the cost of a packet of seeds. Height solves the vertical problem. There is one more element almost every expensive-looking yard shares that has nothing to do with plants at all, and it's coming up as our biggest reveal yet.
6. Wash your hardscaping. This is a fact that shocks most homeowners. The single fastest way to make an outdoor space look old and cheap is not the plants at all. It is dirty concrete, grimy pavers, or a mildew-stained fence. Our brains associate cleanliness with expense, which means a spotless walkway can outperform an entire flower bed in how expensive a yard feels. A basic pressure washer rental for a few hours, or even a stiff brush with dish soap and water for smaller areas, can strip away years of built-up grime from driveways, patios, and fences. The transformation is often so dramatic that homeowners say their own concrete looks like it was freshly poured. The surprising fact is that most concrete and pavers are not actually gray. They start out a warm, almost cream white color, and years of dirt buildup is what makes them look dull gray. Underneath that grime is often a brand new looking surface waiting to be revealed. Let me ask you something. Out of everything so far, which one are you most excited to try this weekend? Hold that thought because I want you to comment it in a second. But first, if you are the kind of person who likes squeezing maximum results out of minimum budget, that is basically the entire identity of this channel. Subscribing means every future list like this lands in your feed the moment it goes live. And trust me, some of the tricks coming up in future videos are even sneakier than these. Hit subscribe, hit like, and let's keep going. Actually, before we move to number 7, drop a comment right now with your city or your state. I want to see how many different places are watching this. And while you are down there, tell me which one of the first 6 changes surprised you the most. I read every single comment, so do not be shy. 7. Use the illusion of depth with a curved path. This is the one I promised you at the start, and it's the trick most homeowners have genuinely never heard of. Straight paths, especially straight lines cutting directly across a yard, make a space look smaller and feel rushed, almost utilitarian. Curved paths do the opposite. They make a yard feel larger than it actually is because the eye cannot see the entire path at once, which tricks the brain into assuming there's more space hidden around the bend. This is called forced perspective, and it's a technique borrowed directly from professional garden designers working on estates and public parks. You don't need pavers or bricks to try this. Even a curved line of mulch, gravel, or stepping stones laid in a gentle S shape rather than a straight line creates this same illusion, and it often costs the exact same amount as a straight path would. The fact almost nobody knows is that professional landscape architects specifically design curves with what's called the golden spiral ratio in mind, the same mathematical proportion found in seashells and galaxies, because the human brain is wired to find that particular curve pleasing without even knowing why. A curved path draws the eye forward, but what happens when that eye finally reaches the end of the yard matters just as much, and that's exactly where we are headed next. 8. Create a focal point. Every expensive-looking yard has one thing in common. There is a single point that draws your eye and holds it, whether that's a bird bath, a striking plant, a bench, or even a large decorative pot. Without a focal point, the eye wanders aimlessly across the space and nothing feels finished, even if every individual plant is healthy and well kept. You do not need to spend much here. A single large terracotta pot with one dramatic plant placed at the end of a path or in the center of a bed can act as the anchor for an entire yard. The key is committing to just one strong focal point rather than scattering several small ones that compete with each other. The surprising fact is that designers often place focal points slightly off-center rather than dead center, because true symmetry can feel stiff and artificial, while a slightly asymmetrical placement feels more natural and intentional, almost like the eye discovered it rather than being told where to look. A focal point anchors the eye, but there is a layer of the yard most people never think to decorate at all, and it happens to be right under your feet. 9. Upgrade your house numbers and mailbox. This one has nothing to do with plants and everything to do with psychology. Before a visitor even sees your yard, they see your house number and your mailbox. If those are faded, rusted, or mismatched, the brain forms a negative first impression before it ever processes anything else about the property. And that negative impression colors how the rest of the yard is perceived, even subconsciously. A fresh coat of black paint on an old mailbox or a set of modern house numbers costing under $20 resets that first impression instantly. Real estate photographers specifically request this exact update before listing photos because it is one of the highest impact changes for the lowest cost in the entire home selling process. The fact most people never consider is that house numbers in a clean, modern font, rather than the builder grade numbers most homes come with, can make a home look years newer just from that single 10-minute swap. Quick pause here. I want to know something specific from you. Out of these 9 so far, which change do you think your neighbors would notice first? Comment that below. I genuinely read these, and sometimes the answers surprise me more than you would think. 10. Add warm lighting. A yard that looks good in daylight but disappears at night is only doing half its job. Warm string lights, inexpensive solar path lights, or a single well-placed lantern can transform an ordinary backyard into something that feels like an outdoor room the moment the sun goes down. This matters more than people realize because evenings are when most families actually spend time outside. The key word here is warm. Cool white or blue-toned lighting tends to feel clinical, almost like a parking lot, while warm amber-toned lighting immediately reads as cozy and expansive, similar to candlelight. Solar path lights in particular have become inexpensive enough that lining a walkway with them costs a fraction of what it did even a few years ago. The surprising fact is that lighting is one of the only upgrades on this entire list that adds a sense of expansive design specifically after dark, meaning it doubles the hours of the day your yard actually gets to show off. Lighting sets the mood at night, but there is one final structural trick that ties every other item on this list together, and it is coming up right now. 11. Repeat materials throughout the space. Here is something almost no homeowner does on purpose, but every expansive-feeling yard does automatically. The materials repeat. If you have wood mulch in one bed, using wood-adjacent tones in your furniture or trim ties everything together. If your path is gravel, using that same gravel as a border somewhere else creates cohesion. Mismatched materials, a bit of red brick here here, some gray pavers there, a random patch of white rock somewhere else is one of the fastest ways to make a yard feel like it was pieced together over years without a plan, even if every individual material is nice on its own. Repetition is what makes a space feel designed rather than accumulated. The fact most people miss is that you do not need to buy new materials to fix this. Often you can simply move existing materials around your property so that what repeats in one area also appears in another, creating cohesion using only what you already own. Materials tie the whole yard together visually, but there is one final change, the one I consider the most underrated of all 12, and it wraps up everything we have talked about today.
12. Keep one thing perfectly maintained. This is the quiet secret behind every yard that looks expensive even when the budget clearly was not. You do not need every single element to be perfect. You need one element to be flawless. A perfectly edged lawn, a spotless front door, one flawless flower bed. The human brain uses that one perfect element as a reference point and assumes the rest of the space matches that same standard of care even when it technically does not. This is sometimes called the halo effect in design psychology, and it explains why a single stunning rose bush can make an entire modest yard feel curated, or why one perfectly clean window can make an entire house feel freshly renovated. Pick one area, put your full effort into it, and let that standard carry the rest of the yard by association. The surprising fact is that professional landscapers use this exact strategy on tight budget projects. Instead of spreading a small budget evenly and thinly across an entire yard, they concentrate it entirely on one showpiece area, because a partially excellent yard reads as more expensive than a yard that is evenly mediocre everywhere. Here is the pattern running through every single one of these 12 changes. None of them were about spending more money. Every single one was about paying attention to details that most homeowners simply never learned to notice. Edges, odd lumbers, color discipline, clean hardscaping, curves instead of straight lines, one strong focal point, warm light, repeated materials, and one flawless feature. That is not a spending strategy. That is a way of seeing your own yard the way a professional designer sees it. The truth is that an expensive-looking home was never really about the size of the budget. It was always about intention. Once you start noticing these small details, you cannot unsee them. And that's exactly the moment your own yard starts looking like it belongs to someone who spent 10 times what you actually did. If this list opened your eyes to how much you can do with almost nothing, you're going to want to see the video I'm dropping next, where I walk through the interior version of this exact concept, the cheap changes that make a home's inside look just as expensive as the outside. Make sure you're subscribed so it shows up the moment it's live, because I promise you it's just as eye-opening as this one. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. I truly appreciate you spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the very next video.